Never told. How a grumpy CEO's dark secret started with a little girl's walk to school. The sun had barely kissed the horizon when the city awoke under a heavy veil of mystery and whispers. In the shadow of the towering Glasstech building, rumors swirled like autumn leaves caught in a gust, tales of secrets that could shake the very foundations of this corporate colossus. As innocent as a little girl's walk to school seemed, it would soon pull back the curtain on a sinister world, one that even the most jaded residents barely believed could exist. 8-year-old Nora bounced her way to class, her lightsabered backpack swaying joyfully against her small frame. But the air felt thick, a charged undercurrent running through the laughter of children. It was there, glimmering in the early light, she first noticed it, a shadow that seemed to linger just beyond her periphery. Every time she turned, it ducked behind a tree or vanished into an alley. A shiver crept down her spine. She dismissed it as just her imagination, but deep down, she felt it a nagging fear that something was wrong. Meanwhile, in that shiny boardroom above, Walter Greaves, the CEO most known for his grumpy scowl and disdain for pleasantries, sat rigid at the head of the table. His mind flashed with a vision that was both beautiful and terrifying, a world of power built on narrowed eyes and muted screams. What was happening on the ground below? As the meeting droned on, he felt that unease in the pit of his stomach. The quiet buzz of cell phones almost drowned out the faint echo of a child's laughter filtering in through the open window. It unsettled him. Then, it happened. Heavy footsteps echoed in the marble hallways, punctuated by the impatient tapping of a high heel, a certain urgency that rippled like a stone dropped in still water. Walter's assistant rushed in, her face pale as she whispered words that sent a chill through his already cold demeanor. There's been an incident near the park. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Nora felt the brush of doubt take hold. Until then, her world had been filled with crayons and storybooks, but now a frisson of dread intertwined with the sweet scent of honeysuckle lining her path. Eyes darted nervously. Adults whispered urgent tones, expressing fear about what lurked out of sight. Was the shadow she noticed merely a figment of her imagination, or was there an unseen hand at play? Her heart raced. As the sky shifted from gold to a bruising purple, a predatory figure loomed near the edge of the park, blending with the night and sending shivers down her spine once more. Local citizens began to gather, their murmurs rising in tension, creating an air thick as the fog that consumed the streets. And there, just beyond sight, was a child's faint scream, piercing through the atmosphere like a knife. Walter's mind spiraled as his dark secret began to claw its way back, spiraling towards a collision course with the present. The questions clung to the air like the smell of rain on dry pavement. What had he done? And how would this all link back to that little girl's innocent journey to school? Secrets were lurking, and soon, they would burst forth into the open, demanding to be revealed. Nora's heart pounded like a drum as the screams pierced the veil of chilling uncertainty. Instinct drove her deeper into the throng of concerned faces gathering near the park's entrance. A knot formed in her stomach, twisting with dread, as she caught snippets of frantic chatter that painted a picture of a nightmare unfolding around her. Distorted cries, shaking breaths, she felt trapped in a horror movie that had suddenly come to life. Then, she caught sight of it. A circle of adults, their expressions shrouded in shock, and just beyond them a figure. It was small and crumpled, a patch of innocence against the gritty concrete. Nausea rose in her throat. Fear seized her, demanding stillness, but she couldn't look away. Who was it? Was it someone she knew? In the boardroom, Walter Greaves' mind raced with thoughts of escape. The calm he'd cultivated over the years felt like shattered glass. He forced himself to breathe, attempting to mask the panic bubbling beneath the surface. As he gripped the edge of the table, the shadows of the past loomed large, whispering reminders of a time when he had turned a blind eye to the darker dealings of his empire. Here was the moment, the tipping point. Whatever had happened down below was a crack in the facade he'd worked so hard to maintain. Walter. The voice of his assistant cut through his thoughts, bringing him back to the present. We need to know. He barked, silencing her. Don't say a word. I know what is going on. I need to understand how deep this goes. He knew it was time to confront the demons of his past head-on, to unearth the truths that had led to this very incident. Meanwhile, Nora waded through the crowd, her small stature allowing her to slip between bodies. She needed to see. She needed to make sense of what was happening. Suddenly, she spotted a police officer pushing through the throng. His face was grave, masked with authority. Everyone stay back. We're handling this. A chill settled into her bones as the officer knelt beside the figure on the ground, his hands steady yet trembling. The gathered crowd hushed, the tension so thick it felt tangible. Nora's brow furrowed in confusion and fear. The world around her receded until all that remained was that dark silhouette. Her imagination conjured up the worst, a monster. A creature crawling from the depths of nightmares. As her eyes tried to make sense of the chaos, Walter stormed out of the building, driven by a compulsion he couldn't ignore. He moved like a man possessed, each step heavy with the weight of consequence. His heart raced alongside Nora's, but he didn't know it yet. He couldn't know that the little girl with the bright backpack would be the key to unlocking the vault of his buried sins. She was the innocent link that might shatter the darkness he had forged. The crowd began to swell with more concern, murmurings escalating to panicked tones. What happened? Is it really true? A child? And amid the rising tide of voices, the true horror unfurled. A flash of red and blue lights painted the street, cutting through the fog of confusion. The world felt unreal, as if time had slowed to a crawl. Nora's eyes widened as she caught the officer's pained expression while a blanket was pulled over the still figure on the ground. A sickening realization crashed over her what lay beneath. Who was it, and how grotesquely would Friday morning's fate intertwine with her innocent journey? As Walter stood just feet away, he felt the ground shift beneath him. There was no escape from the tides of fate, they were coming in fast. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a voice broke through the chaos. Get down. Just then, a shot rang out, echoing into the stunned silence, rocketing them toward an uncertain abyss. Who would be the next victim of his hidden sins, and how far would he go to protect himself? The answer lingered in the air, just out of reach, threatening to turn everything he knew upside down. The shot shattered the terrified stillness, sending pulses of fear racing through the crowd. Chaos erupted as people screamed, ducking for cover, their faces painted with shock. Nora dropped to her knees, her heart thumping louder than her thoughts. She had never been this close to danger, and in that instant, the world around her morphed into a blur of confusion. Everyone, stay back! Shouted the officer, his voice barely piercing through the cacophony. But Nora's attention was fixed on Walter, who had instinctively turned towards the sound, panic flickering across his face. The boardroom and its sterile, corporate air felt worlds away now. What had he gotten himself into? Why couldn't he shake the feeling that he was somehow tied to this nightmare? People began to scatter, each seeking safety in a different direction. Walter moved forward, drawn toward the crowd now thickening with fear. His instincts screamed for him to retreat, but an unseen force pulled him toward the chaos. He had to know what was happening, he had to find the little girl. Suddenly, the crowd surged, and Walter stumbled, nearly losing his balance. He caught a glimpse of blue uniforms and the grim expressions of paramedics pushing past people to reach the scene. Then he heard a voice, a child's, breaking the commotion. Mommy! Where's my mommy? Nora's heart cracked open at the sound. Through a nearby mass of people, she spotted a little girl in a pink jacket, her arms reaching desperately toward the worried parent who had somehow slipped away. In that moment, Nora's resolve solidified. She had to help. Hey. It's okay. Nora called out, rushing toward the girl, desperately trying to cut through the chaos. The sight of the small, trembling figure ignited a flame of defiance in her. She wouldn't let this girl feel alone in such turmoil. As she reached the child, their eyes locked. Those innocent eyes, wide and shimmering with unshed tears, echoed the fear pounding in her own chest. "Let us find your mommy together," Nora said, her voice steady, even though her insides twisted like a knot. Walter, still lost in thoughts of his own guilt, caught sight of them, the small girl and Nora, the connection of their spirits in that icy fear. A thought struck him. If this little girl was the key to unraveling the mystery, to revealing truths he had worked to bury, then who was targeting her? Before he could analyze the implications, another shot rang out, this time closer. Goosebumps prickled down Nora's arms as she instinctively crouched down, pulling the girl close. "Stay low," she whispered, feeling the weight of the moment press onto her chest. In the distance, sirens wailed, the sharp sound escalating all around them, punctuating the tension like a heartbeat. People ducked for cover, some screaming while others simply froze, the chaos threatening to swallow them whole. Walter watched as the world spiraled into panic. His mind raced, trying to fit the pieces together. The little girl, the darkness of his past, the relentless chaos, all of it converging. What if this wasn't just a freak accident? What if it was a deliberate act? Could it be tied to him? Just then, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. He turned into the fierce gaze of a police officer. "We need you to come with us, sir. We have a situation." Every instinct screamed for him to refuse, to pull away, but as he took one last look at Nora shielding the girl, just struggling to give comfort, he realized he had no choice. What haunted him wasn't the fear of being caught, it was the growing certainty that somewhere in this storm lay the truth he had spent a lifetime evading. In the distance, a shadow loomed large against the flashing lights, and there was no longer any hiding from the fallout of his choices. As human instincts collided with the urgency of their circumstances, Walter felt the weight sink in. The girl wasn't just a victim, she was a signal. A whisper from the past. What lay ahead would unravel everything for Walter, Nora, and the little girl caught in the center of it all. It was time to confront what they all shared in the chaos. The truth would come, and it would either set them free or destroy them completely. But as Walter began to follow the officer, a single thought haunted him: was the truth about to rise from the ashes of despair, or would it plunge them into darkness none could escape? Nora held the little girl tight, their breaths mingling as the world around them dissolved into a haze of panic. The sirens grew louder, piercing through the frantic shouts and the crackle of walkie-talkies. "Stay down," she murmured again, her voice barely more than a whisper, trying to shield the girl from the chaos. They were hidden behind a row of overturned chairs that had been flung aside in the frenzy. The little girl's blue eyes were wide with confusion, her face streaked with tears and dirt. "I want my mommy," she cried, trembling as another shot echoed in the distance, each sounding like thunder clapping right above them. "Hey, listen to me," Nora said, forcing calm into her voice. "What's your name?" "Lucy," the girl whimpered, her small frame trembling. "Lucy, I promise we're going to find your mommy, okay? You just have to stay close to me." Nora's heart raced. She couldn't lose this child in the chaos. The crowd was getting increasingly frantic, everyone moving like a pack of frightened animals. Nora scanned the room as best she could, frantically searching for a way out, her instincts kicking in. Amid the confusion, she caught sight of Walter, looked as if he were wrestling with invisible chains. He followed the police officer away, but his gaze flicked back to her, a mixture of desperation and worry etched on his face. An invisible thread connected them through the chaos. Walter's mind churned. He felt a pull back to Nora and Lucy. He had to help them, but the officer, firm and determined, tugged him toward a temporary safe zone. "You need to tell us what you know," the officer insisted, his voice urgent. "Wait," Walter protested, shaking off the officer's grip. "I can't leave them. Look, there's a shooter out there. We're trying to secure this area." Without waiting for an answer, Walter tore away. He burst through the crowd, pushing past terrified faces. The room throbbed with uncertainty, each cry and gasp blending into a haunting symphony of fear. He spotted Nora kneeling before the girl, their connection visceral against the backdrop of dread. Before he could reach them, a loud crash echoed through the air, causing everyone to flinch, and suddenly, the front doors blasted open. A figure rushed in, silhouette outlined by the flashing lights outside. A man, his face obscured by shadows, moved with purpose. The atmosphere thickened, coated in a palpable sense of dread. Who was this person, and what did they want? "Get down!" Someone yelled, and the crowd dropped again, a wave of panic cascading throughout the room. Walter felt himself freeze. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead as he realized the implications. The shooter was still here. His heart raced. "Move!" Nora shouted, grabbing Lucy by the hand. They darted behind a broad column as the confusion reigned, clinging to the moment, drawing closer together. Lucy's scream pierced through the noise. Walter's heart sank as he witnessed Nora shielding the girl desperately, the weight of the moment manifesting in their fearful eyes. The figure moved closer, and the atmosphere fizzled with tension. Walter's pulse was a drum in his ears. Who did they want? Was it the girl, or was it something far darker? "Nora!" he yelled, voice hoarse. "We need to go." But as he stepped forward, the man turned abruptly. A glint of metal caught Walter's eye. A gun. A collective gasp resonated around the room, and time stretched thin, every breath becoming a question of survival. In that instant, Walter's mind was a cyclone of conflicting thoughts. He could run, or he could confront whatever darkness was unraveling before him. As Lucy clung to Nora, sobbing quietly, Walter took a step closer to the unfolding danger. He had made choices in his past. Now those choices demanded accountability. Would he face the truth, or let the past consume him again? Nora, feeling Walter's presence behind her, narrowed her gaze at the intruder, something igniting in her chest. They were deeper in than they had thought. With lives hanging in the balance, the inevitable stood before them. Each decision would spark a new path. Each second could turn fatal. What secrets lay hidden in the shadows, and who would pay the price as they all faced the dark storm together? The figure moved through the haze of chaos, stepping ever closer, the gun held tightly in his right hand. Shadows pooled around him, and the flickering lights played tricks on the eyes. Nora's breath quickened. She wrapped her arms tighter around Lucy, feeling the small body quake against her. The world outside their fragile bubble felt brutal and unpredictable. "Stay quiet," she urged Lucy, her own voice shaking. Each thud of her heart seemed to echo louder than the chaotic screams around them. Walter, still in the periphery, was caught in a moment of heavy uncertainty. Was he going to run toward the danger? Could he carry Nora and Lucy away from this horror? "Who are you?" Nora shouted, her voice breaking through the panic, sudden and fierce. The man paused, a flicker of surprise crossing his shadowed features. "Doesn't it matter who I am?" he sneered, eyes glinting like dark stars. "What matters is what I want." Walter edged closer, forcing his way through the writhing crowd, watching every tense movement of the intruder. He felt a charged atmosphere, as if the air itself was waiting for something to break. Nora placed a trembling hand on Lucy's back, urging her down again. "We'll be okay. Just hold on, Lucy." She pressed her forehead against the girl's soft hair, feeling the warmth of her tiny frame that reminded her they had to survive. "Get back!" the man commanded, his voice grating like rusted metal. "Anyone who tries to get in my way will regret it." As he moved further into the crowd, it felt as if everyone was a living, breathing wall collapsing inward, despair sinking like a stone in the pit of Nora's stomach. The sudden realization struck her: the man wasn't just here to cause chaos, he was there for something specific. "Walter!" she called, heart slamming against her ribs. "We have to get out. Now." But Walter didn't seem to hear her. His eyes were locked on the figure, and in the split second of hesitation, Nora felt her blood run cold. There was a shimmer of recognition in Walter's gaze, a ripple of understanding that seemed to stem from something deeper. "Walter!" she yelled again, desperate. "What is going on? What do you know?" But the man turned again, pointing his gun into the crowd. "One more step, and I'll shoot." Gasps and cries erupted around them, the mass of people falling against each other in a torrent of panic. Nora glanced at Lucy, who was frozen beneath her hand, wide-eyed with terror. "Stay here," she whispered fiercely, gathering her resolve. "Don't look, just keep your head down. I promise, we'll get out of this. I want to let you go." The floor trembled with the weight of apprehension. Walter felt his legs move on instinct, pulling him closer to the unfolding madness. The threat resonated with him. He recognized the menacing energy coming from the intruder, the kind that sullied the very air around them. "Is your mother here?" the man shouted, his voice slicing through the panic like a knife. "I'll make her pay if anyone crosses me." Nora's heart sank. He was using Lucy as bait, dangling the child's safety in front of them like a twisted game. It sent a jolt of rage through her veins. She couldn't let him exploit the innocence of a child. "Walter!" she pleaded once more, fear filling her throat. "Help us!" In that moment, the gunman's attention shifted, the way a predator fixates on prey. Walter's throat tightened. He couldn't let that happen. Lucy's safety depended on him. The time for indecision was over. But just as he took a step forward, the lights above flickered, throwing everything into disarray. The next heartbeat pulled taut, pregnant with uncertainty. Would Walter face this danger head-on, or would fear dictate what happened next? The echo of chaos hung in the air like a storm. Everyone knew that something had to give. Would they stand together against the unknown, or would they be swept away in the tide of apprehension? The answer lingered just out of grasp, like shadows scrambling to conceal their secrets. As the flickering lights began to stabilize, time felt like it stretched in an unbearable freeze. Nora's eyes darted around the thrumming mass of people. Faces blurred with fear and confusion. She had to believe that someone would rise to the occasion. The gunman was scanning the crowd, the intensity of his glare cutting through the chaos like a blade. Nora felt the wall of dread thickening. She could almost hear the dread whispers of people pressing against each other, debating whether to flee or fight. "Walk away now." Walter's voice sliced through Nora's thoughts, raw and urgent. The gunman's sneer deepened, an unspoken challenge like a specter hanging in the air. Walter's resolve seemed to crystallize. Instead of retreating, he took another step, defiance painting his features. "No!" Nora hissed, gripping Lucy tighter. Why couldn't he see the danger? The gunman chuckled darkly, amusement and madness intertwined. "You think you can save her?" His finger twitched on the trigger. Walter, oblivious to the warning signs, advanced again, eyes blazing with a resolve Nora had never seen before. With a single breath, the gunman pivoted, a deadly arc of the weapon aimed directly at Walter. The crowd collectively held its breath, anticipating the worst. "Get down!" Walter barked a command, a plea, a desperate act all at once. He lunged toward the figure, muscles tensing as he prepared to tackle him, to snatch the gun away. In the split second of adrenaline-driven motion, Nora's heart raced alongside the slicing truth that Walter was risking it all, perhaps even his own life, just to protect them. But the world spun in clashing colors and noise. The gunman, startled, aimed wildly. It happened in a blink, a shadow danced, Walter dove, and all at once, a thunderous roar drowned out the cacophony. A shot rang out. Nora's world collapsed inward, her breath stolen, her heart thundering in her chest. She raised her eyes, horrified, trying to comprehend the unfolding drama. Had Walter been hit? The crowd erupted into chaos, people scrambling to escape the gunman's wrath. Nora clutched Lucy, both of them freezing in place, eyes wide, searching for Walter, searching for safety. "Mommy!" Lucy cried, her voice piercing through the din, bringing an unbearable clarity. The gunman stayed locked onto Walter, who was grappling for control, but Walter's determination began to crack. The gunman's hand shook, aimed but unsure, held hostage by his own rage and fear. Time seemed to dilate, pregnant with the raw energy of that moment. "Let her go!" Walter shouted, voice cutting through the whirlwind. He wasn't scared now, he was fierce, roaring against the abyss. Nora felt a spark of hope igniting within her, battling the shadows closing in. She couldn't let it extinguish. "Walter!" She yelled again, voice steadying amidst the clamor. "We need to move. Now." In a last-ditch effort, she stood up, breaking from their hidden corner. Would Walter follow her call? The uncertainty was electric. She could feel the air thick as syrup, each second dragging painfully. With disbelief, the gunman turned his gun on her. "Stay back." He was panting now, fear creeping into his bravado. "Please." Nora shouted, desperation pouring from every nerve. "Just let us go. You don't have to do this." For a heartbeat, the tension hung, the thick air paralyzed by a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. Would he listen? But the storm was only just beginning, a tide of uncertainty that didn't care for their pleas, swirling into a shifting darkness. Would their desperate hope survive this confrontation? The die was cast. What secrets lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be unveiled? Nora could almost feel the gunman's uncertainty vibrate through the air. It offered a flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't the unstoppable monster he appeared to be. Her heart raced as she locked eyes with Walter, who was wrestling with the gunman, desperately trying to tip the scales in their favor. Time stretched again, every moment weighed heavier than the last. The gunman's eyes darted between Walter and Nora, the panic evident even in his madness. Something about that glance stirred something deep within Nora. "Lucy, stay close," she whispered, guiding her daughter behind a nearby table. The metal was cold under her fingertips, a thin barrier against the chaos. They could be safe. They had to be. "No." Walter roared again, and that roar echoed in the cramped space, beyond the whimpering and screams. The gunman faltered, and the moment seemed to shimmer. Nora's instincts screamed to grab Lucy and flee, but an invisible thread bound her to Walter's fierce bravery. He was risking everything for them, and she wasn't about to let that sacrifice be in vain. "Drop the gun." Walter barked as if his words could penetrate the gunman's madness. "You don't want to do this." But that plea only provoked the gunman more. The weapon shook in his grip, splitting the difference between terror and unwarranted power. "Shut up!" he screamed, like a child lashing out, weeping in frustration. For a second, the gunman turned away, glancing at the frenzied crowd. Nora saw her chance. "Now, Walter." She thrust her voice into the chaos, urging him forward. Walter didn't hesitate, he pressed harder, using the distraction to drive the gunman back. Users of violence were rarely as relentless as their power suggested. They were often afraid, and fear was a crack in the armor of any tyrant. But just as Walter surged ahead, a second shot rang out. Everything froze in that heartbeat. Nora's breath caught, the world around her dulled, and the echo of the shot struck like lightning. A scream cut through her chest, raw and unexpected. The gunman staggered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Walter!" Nora gasped, terror flooding her veins. The silence that followed was deafening, drowning them in a stark reality. A new wave of chaos erupted, people flooding toward the exits. The walls echoed with shouts, panic swirled like a physical presence, and even in this hell, Nora couldn't look away. She desperately scanned for Walter, dread pooling in her stomach. Had he been hit? Then, a flicker caught her eye. Walter was still on his feet, swaying slightly but alive. He raised a hand, blood trickling from a graze on his arm. The gunman, however, stumbled back, his confidence shattered, wild eyes now wide with desperation. "You didn't listen." He screamed at Walter, then swung the gun to aim at the crowd, as if seeking a target among the panicked throng. No. Don't. Nora fumed, adrenaline pumping through her veins. You can't. In that split second, time crumbled again as Walter lunged forward, but this time with a flash of hope. Get out! He yelled, voice hoarse but commanding. Nora clutched Lucy tighter, grounding them both. But the gunman was against the ropes now, spiraling into a corner where choices narrowed. Nora could see it, the flicker of a desperate man. Desperate men did desperate things. The trickle of blood from Walter's arm intensified. Would he be the one to save them, or would it all end in another shot? She felt Lucy squeeze her hand, a silent question emanating from the little girl's wide eyes. What was left unsaid in the heavy air? Could they escape this stranglehold of darkness, or would the shadows swallow them whole? As they braced for the next move, one thought hung perilously in the air: who would be the next target? Nora's heart raced like a train barreling down the tracks, each beat echoing in her ears as the gunman's wild gaze sought out the crowd. The urgent chaos swirled around her, but in that moment, time felt suspended. She glanced at Walter, vulnerable yet steadfast, the blood on his arm creating a gruesome outline against his shirt. The gunman frothed at the mouth, his breaths quick and shallow. You don't know what you're doing. He snarled at Walter, voice cracked and panicked. Get back. Or they'll suffer. With every frantic glance at Walter, Nora could feel the tension winding tighter, like a noose ready to snap. Please, just do what he says. She shouted, desperation dripping from her voice. We'll help you. Whatever you want, just stop. But her plea seemed to incite him further. Help me. He spat the words, eyes narrowing. You think I need help? I just wanted to make things right. I wanted them to listen. The gunman waved the pistol wildly, as if it alone could validate his madness. Nora squeezed Lucy's hand more tightly. It's okay, baby. Just stay close, she whispered, a tremor starting in her voice. The crowd's panic surged, movement becoming a pulse of bodies pushing away from the unseen threat. She could hear muffled cries and shouts, but all Nora could focus on was the whir of fear tightening its grip around her family. Every moment she spent watching the gunman stare down Walter felt like a thread fraying closer to the breaking point. Walter took a cautious step forward, unwavering. I'm not afraid of you, he said, loud and clear. Please, just listen to me. We can work something out. Put down the gun. Shut up. The gunman screamed, his voice echoing in the chaotic venue. You're just another one of them. His finger trembled over the trigger, and a deep primal fear clawed at Nora's chest, threatening to breach her composure. Suddenly, from the far side of the chaos, a crash echoed, a table upturned, revealing a woman falling to the ground. Instantly, the gunman's attention snapped, the aim of his weapon shifting towards a new target. Nora's heart lurched. This was it, this was the moment she had feared. Walter. She screamed, but the sound felt distant, suspended like the flickering lights overhead. Time snapped back as Walter lunged toward the gunman, fist outstretched. In that fleeting second, everything felt magnified: the gun, the aim, the imminent disaster. Let her go, he bellowed, launching himself into the fray just as the gunman pulled the trigger. The shot rang out once again, and horror clawed at Nora's throat as a body crumpled to the floor. She didn't have time to process the wail that split the air. The world had turned gray. Walter stumbled back, his eyes wide, his breath hitching. Nora's world shattered as she realized he wasn't the one who had fallen. The gunman screamed in rage, spinning around, searching for the next victim in the madness he had unleashed. Chaos erupted anew, people screaming and running for the nearest exit, and Nora caught a glimmer of hope as she saw an opening. Lucy, this way! She shouted, pulling her daughter tight as they began to weave through the thickening crowd. But with every step, dread twisted in her gut. Where was Walter? Could he hold on long enough for them to escape? As they neared the door, the gunman's eyes narrowed once more on Nora and Lucy, a wolf honing in on his prey. Stop! He yelled, voice cracking. Nora froze, sweat trickling down her back. This was it. Would he pull the trigger? Would his fingers twitch and find their target? As she stared into the barrel of the gun, she knew one thing: their fate was about to be decided. What had begun as a nightmare now loomed larger than life. Would she witness the horror unfold or manage to save her family from the gripping shadows of despair? The pulse quickened, and Nora realized the shadows were circling, closing in closer than ever. As the gunman shouted again, fury and fear blending into one chilling declaration, Nora prepared for the unspeakable. What would it take to break this cycle of violence? Would they find a way out? Before it was too late. Nora's breath hitched as the chaos closed in around her. The gunman's finger flickered, and for a moment, everything slowed. She could hear the frantic heartbeat of the crowd, the shuffling feet, the muffled cries drowning in the undertow of screams. Stay still. He barked, his eyes darting. A primal instinct triggered. Nora's heart pounded, a desperate inferno. She couldn't let this madman take her daughter. She gripped Lucy's hand fiercely, feeling the warmth slip through her fingers, an anchor in the storm. But then, the look of sheer terror in her daughter's eyes cut deeper than any bullet. Mommy! Lucy whimpered, her small voice barely making it through the chaos. Lucy, listen to me, Nora said, her own fear cradled in determination. We're going to be okay. Just trust me. Each word felt like a promise that hung in the air, frail yet mighty. The gunman shifted, growing impatient. I said stop. You don't understand what I've been through. His voice dripped with pain, mingling with madness. A porcelain mask broken, revealing fragility beneath the rage. Nora caught sight of Walter, struggling to get back on his feet. He was alive. Hope flickered. But she was torn. His bravery had already put him in danger. Would it be enough to save them? Please. Nora shouted, breaking through the noise. Let us go. You can end this without more violence. She stepped forward, needing to reach him, her heart pounding with reckless courage. For an instant, the man's eyes softened, a glimpse of humanity flashing through the storm. Then, like a thunderclap, the shadows of despair clouded his judgment once more. You don't get to tell me what to do. They don't listen until it's too late. Something dark broke free within him, and he aimed the gun right at her. Time stretched, and the weight of that moment snapped her focus back. Fear clawed at her throat. Walter! She screamed again, her voice raw with desperation. He was still fighting against the crowd, trying to push backwards toward them. The gunman's gaze bounced between them, a cornered animal sensing danger. Nora could see the gears turning in his mind, unsure whether to unleash his fury or listen. With shaking hands, Walter reached for his own belt. I'm talking to you. He shouted, voice arresting the chaos for a second. You don't need this. We can talk. Nora's heart sank. Would that be enough? Could they pull this madman back from the edge? The room hung in a tight silence, the calm before the storm. The gunman's finger twitched. Talk. What good is that going to do? What do you know? Nora felt her body trembling, every part of her screaming for action. Everything. We know pain. We see it every day. But hurting others won't make it better. He faltered. Just for a heartbeat, chaos paused, and for the first time, confusion crossed his face. Walter moved closer, hands raised, palms out in a non-threatening gesture. Just put the gun down, Walter pleaded, desperation pouring from him, and we can find a way to help you. But the moment hung like a taut string straining against the bow. Just as hope flared, the gunman's resolve shook. I'm done talking. He howled, and with a horrified gasp, Nora realized the gun was wavering, but the barrel swung back to her direction. Nora's stomach dropped. No. Please don't. And then. The shrill ringing of sirens blasted outside, slicing through the tension like a knife. Shadows of blue flashed against the walls, and chaos erupted anew as the fleeting moment of hope vanished into despair. "Shoot them!" The gunman screamed as panic surged back into the crowd, and chaos swallowed them whole. Nora grabbed Lucy in a vice-like hold, fear coursing through her veins. They had to move, but the door felt a million miles away, and in the growing din, the shadows began to close in, threatening to consume them whole. Would they slip through the cracks, escape the nightmare alive, or would darkness grip them once more? The sirens screamed louder, but so did the gunman, and now, the tension cracked like ice underfoot. Time was running out. Nora's heart raced as the chaos erupted around them. The air was thick with screams and the acrid smell of fear, mingling in a nauseating blend. She clutched Lucy to her side, a lifeline in the storm, but the world felt like it was unraveling. The gunman's rage was palpable, his voice echoing through the hall, sharper than glass. With each frantic glance, she searched for Walter, her eyes darting among the panicking crowd. Where was he? A flicker of movement caught her attention. Walter was dragging himself forward, his face a mix of blood and determination. "Nora!" He shouted over the din, urgency threading through his voice. "Get away from him!" The gunman twisted toward Walter, the wildness in his eyes flaring. "Stay back!" He bellowed, but something was different this time. It was as if the gunman was losing the grip on his anger, anxiety creeping in like a thief in the night. Nora felt the shift too. "We need to move," she urged Lucy, as they crouched behind an overturned table, the wooden surface trembling slightly beneath them. The chaos surged, pressing down, squeezing the air from her lungs. Another shot rang out. The sound drowned everything, causing Nora to flinch as her worst fears coalesced into reality. The gunman had fired again, aiming not at them but into the huddle of terrified people behind. Body after body fell to the floor, screams weaving through the air, and time shortened to a terrible reality. "Help us!" Nora screamed to Walter, desperation clawing at her throat. The echoes of chaos enveloped them, but her voice wouldn't be swallowed. "Please!" But Walter pressed forward, defiant, fueled by adrenaline and an intrepid resolve she had never witnessed before. "You don't have to hurt anyone," he yelled, each word a lifeline. "We can help you. Just stop." The gunman's laughter broke out, but it lacked strength, tinged with an uncertainty that only grew as his actions drove him further into a corner. "Help." He spat the word like it was venom. "What do you know about help? All of you don't help. You take." Something shifted within Walter. "No. We've all been through pain. That's why we need each other." Nora felt the tremor of Walter's plea. It was a flame that could extinguish the shadows. But she couldn't just stand there, she had to act. "Lucy, hold my leg. Stay down and don't move." With a shared nod, Lucy braced herself. Nora sprang up, making herself visible to the gunman. Her heart thundered in her chest. "You don't have to do this. Stop hurting people who want to help." The man turned toward her, torn between the threat she posed and the truth she spoke. His face contorted with a whirlwind of madness and fear. "Shut up!" he roared, but the fire in his eyes dimmed, and Nora seized the moment. "We're just scared too," she shouted, pouring every ounce of empathy into her words, a vulnerable thread connecting their realities. "But this isn't going to fix anything." Behind the madness, through the panic, she could see the shift. The gunman's hand faltered ever so slightly. "Let them go." Walter shouted again, stepping closer, each word like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. "You can regain control." At that moment, the air stilled, pulling taut with unspoken decisions. Desperation swirled as they collectively held their breath. In seemingly endless seconds, the gun shifted, wavering as if caught between worlds. The gunman's eyes flared with a mix of fury and desperation, the predator feeling cornered. "I won't let them take anything else from me." But Walter didn't retreat. You can change this. You can stop the pain. We all feel it. The gunman hesitated, tension slicing air like a knife. You don't understand. He cried, caught in anguish, the truth unraveling in the open air. Nora stepped in. Help us understand. She urged, her voice quaking but firm. We want to listen. In that elusive silence, the crowd was frozen, a collection of breaths waiting for the storm to break. And in that burgeoning hope, a flicker of humanity began to emerge from the gunman's stance. Everything hinged on this precipice. This could go either way. Every heartbeat thundered, splintering time. Drop the gun, she whispered, courage pulsing through her veins. A moment passed before the gun slipped from his fingers, thudding against the floor, a shattering of the silence that echoed around them. Nora's breath caught, a wild mix of disbelief and the tiniest thread of relief. The gunman's shoulders slumped, surrendering to the weight of his pain. The shadows seemed to retreat as sirens blared outside, a swarm of chaos about to give way to order. Nora rushed forward, crumpling to the ground near the gunman, willing to understand, to connect, her hand gripping his shoulder in an earnest, fierce squeeze. This doesn't have to be your end. Let us be your way forward. In that pivotal moment, Walter stood alongside her, finding their strength intertwined, hands reaching forward like anchors to salvage the wreckage of despair. The little girl, Lucy, peeked from behind the table, wide-eyed yet hopeful, a fragile connection amid the terror. As emotions surged into the air, whispers began to fill the space, offering hints of hope and a chance for healing. The shadows receded like a fading memory. Walter took a breath, the realization washing over him. This was their path to redemption, one that didn't revolve around hatred or terror, but rather the power of compassion and hope. With the sirens growing ever closer, they embraced the light amidst the chaos, a shared intent to heal rather than harm. They would face whatever came next together, allowing love to stitch together the wounds of their fractured lives. When the police finally entered, their faces armored with authority, they found something unexpected unfolding. Walter's heart hardened but then softened as he witnessed Nora and Lucy standing ground in unity. In that moment, he turned to the officers, resolve burning bright. They're here for us. No more fear. We choose light. Together, they would dismantle the shadows of despair. Their fears would no longer dictate their lives, they had fought back against the darkness. That was only the beginning of healing. And at that moment, the hope clenched something powerful and true in all their hearts. Together, they would bear witness to a new dawn. Now don't just read this conclusion, experience every moment. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more thrilling stories just like this. Smash the like button now to keep this energy flowing through the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Be a true fan and help us grow this amazing community.